All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome in. So another training camp practice officially in the books. Pads are on. Contact is live. But this is right around that time where maybe you see some standouts early start to fall down the pecking order a little bit. And then maybe you have guys that didn't really turn many heads all of a sudden start to emerge because their physicality, their tackling, all of that can be on full display, right? I mean, there were multiple reporters talking about the level of physicality at today's practice. I believe it was Zach Rosenblatt who said it's been the most physical practice that he's seen in years. You know, that having a physical practice is one thing, but for him, I mean, he's at all these different practices. For him to, say that it's up to that level, I think is pretty significant. Now, another theme of today's practice was eliminating penalties. Aaron Glenn talked a little bit about it in the press conference afterwards, saying that, hey, there was a couple, but they're going to get cleaned up over time. Now, that, of course, along with physicality, should be a theme of camp in its entirety. But just think about this for a second, right? The Jets right now are prioritizing physicality, tackling, eliminating penalties, and by focusing on those bullet points, you're also creating discipline. And if you think about the New York Jets, not to, bring up the last regime or anything, but when you think about the last, 4 to 6 years, there were issues with tackling, there were issues with penalties, there were issues with physicality, and there was issues with discipline. All four areas are being keyed in on in the early stages of training camp. In other words, Aaron Glenn, and look, we talked about this when they first got the job. There seems to be this clarity, this proactive approach, this game plan on how to address the issues of this team. It's funny, Tyson from Let's Talk Jets Radio and I are always kind of joking about it, but it seemed like it was evident in those press conference, in those intro pressers, it almost felt like Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji were in our shoes, right? Fans of this team, watching the games on Sunday, really getting frustrated with the losses, how this team was losing, looking at all the stories throughout the week and all the reports and the leaks and everything. It was just a mess. And you can just, I don't know, for me at least, it was just really refreshing to hear the guys now running the show, the figureheads, the pillars of this organization, understand exactly what the issues are and also at the same time understand exactly what they need to do to fix them. So look, it's day one of pads, day one of full contact. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but man, if you're a Jet fan, watching what we saw last season, the season before that, the issues just on the field, off the field, like it's tough not to really like what Glenn is not only just talking about, but proving also on the practice field. Now, as far as Justin Fields is concerned, more impressive stuff, right? Of course, on the field looks solid, but participated in 11 on 11s. Aaron Glenn talked about Justin Fields is still quote unquote limited, but he's limited in the way the Jets want him to be limited, if that makes sense. So not 100% greenlit, but hey, again, a couple days ago, it seemed like the sky was falling with this whole toe injury, lower body injury, carted off the field. So the fact that he's already pretty much back in the rotation, jogging around, dressing, stretching, taking snaps, throwing passes is a huge win. I got to be honest, Justin could be struggling, missing throws, being a little late, maybe not as much zip on the football. And for me, it would still be a win because the simple fact of he's lining up and he's actually available to take these reps. And then when, of course, he gets 100% healthy, then obviously I want to see the production kind of bump up, the success bump up. But, until then, the simple fact that Justin is lining up out there, participating, dealing with the dislocated toe, is a huge win. Throw on top of it that he's actually looking impressive in 7-on-7s, in drills and whatnot. That to me is just kind of like the cherry on top. So everything from Justin Fields' standpoint, positive stuff. Now let's talk about a couple standouts from today's practice. The first, Mason Taylor. According to reporters here, it seems like the chemistry between Justin Fields and Mason Taylor is slowly building. It's slowly getting better. And as camp is going on here, it feels like Mason is picking up the offense. The game is slowing down. Obviously, it's not like we've had 3 weeks of contact football or anything, but the simple fact that Mason Taylor is getting involved, he's forming that bond between him and Fields. Because let's be honest, yes, Mason Taylor was impressive. Yes, Mason Taylor was a second-round pick. Yes, he has production in the SEC. But for him coming in at his age to be the tight end one of this football team, to be this dynamic weapon, maybe he can line up outside, he can line up in the slot, obviously blocking responsibilities as well. Mason's going to have a lot of responsibilities for, a standard rookie. Lot on his plate. So these reps are very, very valuable. I think that's why a lot of people were maybe nervous because of the holdout. Like, hey, we can't afford to let a guy like this miss weeks of training camp over like an unsigned rookie deal. Thankfully, that did, of course, get done. But these reps are very, very important. And it's awesome that we're hearing some positive stuff regarding Mason Taylor and Justin Fields. That chemistry starting to build up. And one thing we do know about Justin Fields, he loves to get the tight ends going in the passing game. We can just simply look back at Cole Kmet's success, his overall production through Justin's first 3 years there. There was that chemistry. Kmet was honestly this, I would say, a pretty impactful piece. Someone who, they would funnel the football to. So again, it's super important that these guys are moving in lockstep together. Now, for these next two guys, it really fires me up because both guys were undrafted. Both guys were my two favorite undrafted free agents from both classes this year. Peyton Paige, Clemson defensive tackle, former 5-star. We've talked a lot about him, but back-to-back days where he's impressed, back-to-back days, according to reporters, where he's impressed in team drills. This is someone with a lot of potential, and I really like the pairing with this defensive scheme and this defensive staff. The big question with Paige, right, because he was like a special teams kind of contributor early in his career, despite coming in as this big-time high school recruit. It wasn't really until that final year there where he got in the field and got onto the field and started making plays for that defense. Now, granted, Clemson is known for their defense, overall defensive line talent. Think about all the guys in the NFL. So it's not like you can just hit the scene as a freshman and just walk right into the starting lineup, even if you're, a top 10 player in the country. It's a difficult task. There's not many positions or positional groups like that in the country. Clemson does their thing with defensive linemen. But with Paige, again, doesn't really see time until that final year, started making plays, started flashing, and ultimately was a third-team All-ACC guy. But again, you just feel like, hey, there's so much untapped potential because he hasn't really been on the field all that much in this style of scheme, playing next to a Quinn Williams, playing or practicing with, veterans like Derek Nottie and whatnot. Leonard Taylor is kind of a good, I would say, maybe role model for him. Someone who you look back at what he was able to do back at Miami. Lots of potential, would flash all the time, but fell in the draft. Leonard Taylor was expected to go in round 4. This guy goes undrafted. So, I feel it's not obviously a one-to-one comparison, and they're not identical players, but at the same time, you just kind of feel like, hey, similar path to the NFL. So I'm pumped. I'm really, really excited that Peyton Paige is turning heads and making plays this early in Jets training camp, right? It's not taking until the second week of preseason for guys to really start noticing. Like, this is the first day of pads, and he's already making plays. And then the next undrafted free agent, who, funny enough, was my favorite free agent from last year's haul, Jarius Monroe, right? Safety at the time, was a corner coming out of Tulane. When the Jets initially scooped him up, I was pumped up, right? The AAC is one of my favorite conferences just because I feel like the talent level in that conference isn't, it's all pretty... it's all kind of on the same playing field, whereas some conferences in college football, like, you feel like you have your top dogs and you have the teams that consistently finish towards the bottom of the conference. Now, anything can happen, right? It's football, but in the AAC, it just kind of feels wide open, and Tulane has been one of those staple teams within that conference for quite a while. Lots of winning. It definitely feels like they have a championship pedigree there. And Monroe spent 2 seasons with the Green Wave, 2-time All-AAC. Really productive as a corner, 6 picks in the 2 years there. Press man guy, super physical, good tackler, good open field tackler, would take good angles to the football. I was thrilled when the Jets scooped him up as an undrafted guy. I thought he was going to be a 7th round pick. But the big flaw with Monroe was overall, like, athleticism. Can he hang with NFL wide receivers? And lo and behold, he transitioned over to safety. Now, according to Zach Rosenblatt, he stood out in the one-on-one team drill early on, where it was like full contact, 1v1, you got to make a play in open space. Supposedly he had two really big hits, along with Andre Cisco making a play. But yeah, Jarius Monroe, he also had a pretty impressive day. I don't think it was in yesterday's practice, but a couple days ago. If this dude can make the team, I would absolutely love that. I just feel like there is a role for this style of player. And you're thinking about how Aaron Glenn wants to run his defense, a physical defense, someone, acquiring players who aren't afraid to tackle, aren't afraid to, fly down the field and really make their presence known. Monroe is that guy, despite him not being the fastest, despite him not being the biggest dude out there, the best coverage skills. Like, he is a very physical player, and he's not afraid to stick his nose in and make a play. Which, again, it just kind of feels like if you have that trait, you're going to stand out to this coaching staff here. So anyway, let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate it. And as always, go Jets.